I uploaded a nearly 4-hour deep dive video on the John O'Keefe and Karen Read case. Since it is so long and has so many different topics, this video is an excerpt of just one topic: evidence for and against Karen Read or someone else being responsible for the death of John O'Keefe. For the true crime cases that I've looked into, as I go along researching information, I create a spreadsheet with reasons for and against the person being involved in the crime. So this spreadsheet is reasons for and against Karen causing the death of John O'Keefe. So for each row, on the left side I have the reasons for, and then in the column on the right, I try to think of other reasons against those facts. This spreadsheet has 102 rows. I told you this is a deep dive. Here we go. There was a lot of tension in Karen and John's relationship, including most of the day, January 28th, before meeting at the first bar. John texted, quote, "Sick of always arguing and fighting. It's been weekly for several months now," end quote. Karen texted frustration that John did not seem to be into the relationship anymore. At 12:37 a.m., Karen left John a voicemail screaming, "John, I fucking hate you!" 5 minutes after John's phone registered the last steps of his life. It was her 8th phone call to John since she first called him at 12:33 and 35 seconds a.m., which was 1 minute and 19 seconds after John's phone last moved on the Alberts lawn. Karina Kolokithis described them as lovey-dovey at the Waterfall Bar. Why did it take John 7 minutes to exit Karen's SUV? What happened inside Karen's SUV that would make her say she hated him? Against this, they appeared happy at the two bars and were planning vacations. People may say Karen's story about John going inside the Alberts home and not updating her caused her to be angry, but that story has proven to be a lie. John used the Waze navigation app to find the Alberts house, but also spoke to Jen twice, who told them it was near the house of a woman John previously hooked up with before dating Karen. Despite the app and directions, Karen missed the left turn onto Fairview. Were they busy arguing? After that, Karen made a 3-point turn in a driveway. At the intersection, a pickup truck flashed its lights for Karen to pull onto Fairview Road, and the truck followed Karen's SUV to the Alberts house because it contained Ryan Nagel, who was picking up his sister Julie from Brian Albert Jr.'s birthday party. At 12:24 and 38 seconds a.m., Karen and John parked in front of the Alberts house. Between 12:31:56 and 12:32:16, John took 36 steps over about 82 feet and never moved again near the flagpole. At 12:32:09, John locked his phone after reading the text from Jen that said, "Pull behind me." The defense argued that between 12:21:10 and 12:24:22, John's phone showed it moved 87 meters, 80 steps, and 3 flights climbed, and that shows John went in the Alberts home and basement where he was attacked. However, the 3 witnesses outside were proven to have texted at 12:23 a.m. that they were arriving soon, and they never saw John get out of the SUV. Experts also noted that testing proved the movement on John's phone was consistent with John using his phone while Karen drove through Canton and the elevation changed 3 meters up or down. However, if that data was wrong, how reliable is the other data and timestamps for John's movements? Several people drove by the Alberts house after 12:32 a.m. and did not see a body other than Julie Nagel possibly seeing a blob near the flagpole before 2 a.m. At 12:31 and 38 seconds a.m., there was a trigger event on Karen's SUV, but the SUV time was not perfectly aligned with the real-world time, so an expert determined the SUV clock was 21 to 29 seconds faster than John's phone, which is more accurate. Between 12:32:04 and 12:32:12, it was the 8-second window based on the time adjustment that Karen's SUV recorded data 5 seconds before and 5 seconds after a trigger event, which in this case was when Karen's SUV's gas pedal throttle hit 30% going in reverse. Karen's SUV went forward 34 feet from the start of the event when it was going 13.67 miles per hour at 5 seconds before the trigger of 30% throttle. Karen put her SUV in neutral, then went in reverse 87 feet during the 10 seconds of data. Her SUV went from 24.2 miles per hour to 23.6 miles per hour half a second later as her steering wheel jostled slightly, which was consistent with a pedestrian strike. At 12:32 and 9 seconds, John locked his phone. At the latest, 12:32:12, Karen's gas pedal hit 30% throttle in reverse 1, 2, or 3 seconds after John pushed the lock button on his cell phone at 12:32:09. Why did Karen floor it in reverse soon after John exited? Against this, the decrease in speed could have been from tires slipping on snow or the curb. People can argue that the SUV time should not have been adjusted, but John had not taken any steps at 12:31:38, so he would have been in the SUV when Karen floored it in reverse. And then he would have gotten out, walked for 20 seconds, and died near the flagpole, which makes no sense how he would have lost his shoe, hat, and gotten the right arm wounds and skull injury, etc. Next up, John sat in Karen's SUV for 7 minutes after parking. Then, in 20 seconds, John started walking, Karen floored it in reverse, and John's phone never moved again from the flagpole area. In combination with this data and John's phone location never in the Alberts home, I cannot think of any other scenario that makes sense. Against this, experts stated that John's injuries are not associated with a car accident. However, all other theories lack solid evidence. At 12:36 and 39 seconds a.m., Karen connected to John's home Wi-Fi. A YouTube video showed the time from the Alberts to John's could be driven in 3 minutes and 40 seconds, meaning Karen would have to leave the Alberts by 12:32 and 59 seconds a.m., which aligns with the timeline. Against this, other YouTube videos showed the drive took longer, but those were in the daytime, more cars on the road, and red traffic lights. 3 people in a truck arrived immediately behind Karen and parked at the driveway between 4 to 7 minutes and never saw anyone get out of Karen's SUV. As they left, they saw Karen's SUV interior light on, but did not see John, which indicates he opened the door to get out when he saw the truck started to pull away from the driveway. Karen lied about parking at the driveway and seeing John walk inside the house. Karen's changing story of what happened. At 5 a.m., she told Kerry that John was dead and later said she thought John was hit by a plow. In the afternoon, she told police she had stomach issues and dropped John off, but did not see him go in the Alberts house. In a TV interview on the ID network, Karen said she wasn't sure if they were at the right house and had John check it out. John took her full vodka soda glass, walked up the driveway, and opened the side door and went to walk in. Karen waited a minute and John did not return. It only took 2 to 3 minutes for Karen to be irritated, so she called John, and he did not answer. Karen said, quote, "You gotta be effing kidding me. What are you doing? You just went in. I'm sitting here. Either we're welcome or we're not, but it shouldn't take you 5 minutes to determine that. And then about 10 minutes went by and I left, and I was not happy. Little did I know, John was not getting my phone calls." End quote. Little did Karen know her data and eyewitnesses prove she's a liar. However, 3 people in the truck said no one got out of the SUV. Karen and John had been parked for 7 minutes and 18 seconds before John took steps out of her SUV. 2 minutes later, Karen called John while driving. 8 minutes and 57 seconds after they arrived at the Alberts house, and not while she waited outside. She did not call him between 12:24 and 12:33 because she knew where he was, possibly too busy arguing with her in her SUV to respond to text messages from Brian and Jen. Why would Karen think John possibly walked into the wrong home, and when he didn't return, her solution was to drive away after midnight while it was snowing without calling him or walking to the door? It makes no sense. If Karen was parked at the driveway, why wouldn't she have asked Julie Nagel when she came out to talk to her brother, "Hey, have you seen my boyfriend inside? Is this the Alberts house?" Never happened because Karen's a liar. In another TV interview with 2020, here's what Karen said. Karen told John to check inside the Alberts home about the party and let her know, quote, "and I'll follow you behind." I said, "Can we make sure we're welcome here? Nobody extended the invite to me. I didn't hear the invite extended to you." So I pull at the foot of the driveway, so I drop him off. He goes up the driveway and approaches the side door. And as I see him approach the door, I look down at my phone. I hadn't been on my phone the entire night. I queue up a song to play on my Bluetooth, and I just start browsing through, missed text messages and a couple of emails, and I probably waited about a full minute, and I look back at the door. I would have expected him to be either walking back to me or calling me that, "Yeah, we're here." The reporter then did a voiceover saying, Reed says after about 10 minutes of waiting in her car, she became irritated that O'Keefe still hadn't gotten in touch with her, and she drove back to his home where she continued calling him before she fell asleep around 1:30 in the morning. However, a few hours after John died, Karen told police she had stomach issues and no intention of going inside the party. Why did her story change? The pickup truck arrived at the same time and they parked at the driveway, not Karen, and no one exited her SUV. Jen did extend the invite to Karen and even gave them directions twice on the phone while Karen drove to the Alberts house. There is waterfall video of Karen and John outside talking to Jen. In a police report shown on the Nightline TV show, it said, quote, "When she and the victim were leaving the waterfall, she stated they were invited to a house on Fairview Road," end quote. So years later in TV interviews, why was she unsure if they were invited? This isn't even a matter of Karen being drunk and forgetting. This story is a proven lie. In the column against this, guest Julie Nagel told police she looked outside for her brother and saw an SUV stopped near the mailbox, but then it moved up between the mailbox and the flagpole, then further up near the flagpole. Nobody got out of the SUV, but this goes against phone expert Ian Whiffen, stating that John's phone data showed he was traveling at 15 to 17 miles per hour when passing the Alberts driveway and did not come to a stop until further up. In another part of Karen's interview with ID, she described approaching 34 Fairview Road with Kerry and Jen around 6 a.m. Quote, "I was looking to find him on the side of the road. I was expecting I'd find him," end quote. This is illogical to expect John would be dead on the side of the road after seeing John walk through the Alberts front door, or if John got out of Karen's SUV near the mailbox, or if John got out of Karen's SUV near the flagpole to walk inside the party and Karen drove home because she had stomach issues. Many of Karen's statements do not align with phone and car data, witness testimony, and common sense. It comes across as trying to look not guilty, but failing miserably. Karen's Vanity Fair interview also included the following. Karen wondered whether they were at the right address. There weren't many cars in the driveway, and Reed felt uneasy. McCabe had conveyed the invitation, so Reed wasn't sure how welcome the couple actually were. O'Keefe said he'd check out the scene and report back, but minutes passed without word. Quote, "I got pissed," end quote. She knew that a woman O'Keefe used to hook up with lived a few houses down the street. He's got to be screwing around. I didn't think he was physically incapacitated, end quote. After about 10 minutes of waiting, Reed drove to O'Keefe's house. To Reed, it felt like Aruba all over again. She sent O'Keefe a barrage of angry voicemails and texts. Aruba is when Karen mistakenly thought that John kissed another woman. Against this, it is so unreasonable that Karen would think that after Jen invited them to her sister's house, and John was just on the phone with Jen twice after they all hung out, and John used the Waze directions app, and there were probably at least 5 cars in the driveway, that John would have Karen drop him off so he could sneak down the street to hook up with another woman. Like he would just leave Karen sitting there while he hooked up, and then how would he get a ride home? John didn't even get out of Karen's car for 7 minutes, so why did it take so long to have a conversation about whether they were at the right house or welcome? John read the text message from Jen at 12:27 asking, "Here?" but did not respond or get out for 4 more minutes. Karen's stories defy common sense. In this story, Karen wasn't sure they were at the right house, so John was going to check it out and report back. Data and eyewitnesses proved this was another lie. But let's pretend like Karen isn't a liar or a forgetful, convicted drunk driver. If John went to check out inside and Karen saw him walk through the door like she stated, her voicemails should have been asking, "John, why didn't you call or text me once you got inside? Why didn't you come back to the car to let me know it was okay to come inside? Why didn't you answer my call when I was parked outside? Since my stomach hurts and the storm is coming, I'm going to sleep at my house." Karen did not call John while she was parked at the Alberts. She was driving to his house. Also from the Vanity Fair interview, quote from Karen, "I believe whatever happened to John was a setup to teach him a lesson or tune him up, and it got out of control. No one would choose to kill someone in their own home and then set it up so sloppily," end quote. Reed was still so confounded by O'Keefe's death that she was open to the idea that she could have accidentally hit him. Quote, "I told my parents, if I did anything in any way, I'll pay my dues," end quote. She says now, quote, "That's how this should work. I want to know the truth. Good, bad, ugly," end quote. Well, then why do your statements not match the truth? Against this, what lesson would anyone inside the Alberts house plan to teach John when there were people there celebrating a birthday? These people just happily hung out with John a week earlier at a bar and an hour earlier at another bar. If Karen saw John walk through the Alberts door like she said, how would she be open to hitting him with her car? Karen had a call with John's sister-in-law Erin after he died. It was early in the afternoon on January 29th, and Karen said she dropped John off at the Alberts house
because she didn't feel like going. If everything was fine between Karen and John, why didn't she either go inside with him or drop him off and go home? She was parked outside the Alberts house for 7 to 8 minutes. Karen's angry voicemails to John, her statement to paramedics that their last interaction was an argument, and her SUV being throttled up to 74% while in reverse shows Karen was angry when she was at the Alberts. John's niece told police she heard Karen tell Jen on the phone that she got in an argument with John and dropped him off. John's phone location data showed he never went in the Alberts house. 9 people inside said John never entered the house, and 3 people outside said he never exited Karen's SUV. So how does John get beat up and bitten by a dog when he never went inside the home? Against this, people argue John's location data radius included parts of the Alberts house. But that was only when the signal and accuracy was bad. As the signal improved seconds later, it showed John's phone was only outside and never in the house, garage, or backyard. Approaching Fairview, his location was always accurate on the street, but his center point was never in the Alberts home. The rear right side of Karen's SUV had various damage all in the area where John would have been walking towards the Alberts driveway after he got out of Karen's SUV after 7 minutes ignoring texts from people asking if they were coming inside. Party attendee Julie Nagel thought she saw a 5 to 6 foot black blob near the Alberts flagpole when they left the party around 1:45 to 2 a.m. Against this, Julie had been drinking alcohol and did not report that to police immediately. There were 5 shards of glass on Karen's bumper, some in the street, and a broken drinking glass near John's body that was similar to a glass he took from the Waterfall Bar. State Police scientist Christina Hanley testified the broken glass did not match 2 shards of glass found on Karen's bumper. She was unable to test the other 3 pieces due to their size and condition. Karen said she removed a piece of glass from John's nose when she found him. So how did it lodge in his nose? What circumstance of Karen hitting John or John getting attacked in the house would cause glass to stick in his nose? Against this, one of the 5 pieces of glass found on her bumper was consistent with a shard ex-trooper Michael Proctor recovered, but was not a match for a broken cup or the other pieces of glass recovered at the scene. Karen's taillight had noticeable damage on video at 5:07 a.m., 8:22 a.m., and 4:12 p.m. before police had a chance to tamper with it. Against this, Dighton officer Nicholas Barros testified the damage he saw at 4:12 was not as bad as the February 1st, 2022 photo from the Canton Police Department garage. But at trial number 2, he gave different answers and admitted it did look similar to the 5:07 and 8:22 a.m. videos, and said Proctor and Buchanan did not touch Karen's SUV at 4 p.m. at her parents' house when it was towed. There were over 40 taillight pieces found near John's body and on the street. Against this, how did John's body crack the light, but his injuries did not include bruises or fractures that are normally associated with that type of impact? No taillight evidence was found at the scene until 5:45 p.m., and Karen's SUV was delivered to the Canton Police Department around 5:31 p.m. Some people argue her taillight was broken at the police department, and then a police officer drove to the Alberts house and planted evidence. Many more pieces of taillight were found at separate times by various officers over the next few weeks. I think her taillight damage on video shows that it was really damaged before police even had a chance to tamper with it, and if they were going to plant taillight evidence, why not do it all on January 29th instead of all the way up to February 18th? John's DNA was found on Karen's taillight, but Proctor and Buchanan's DNA was not, which contradicts accusations of tampering. Why not just plant all the pieces the first night if police were framing Karen? Against this, Nicholas Bradford from the company Bodhi Technology said, quote, "It is at least 740 non-million times more likely to be observed if it originated from John O'Keefe and 2 unknown, unrelated individuals than from 3 unknown, unrelated individuals," end quote, he said, noting that non-million is a number with 30 zeros. Maureen Hartnett is a state police scientist, and she said there was no blood on the car. John dated Karen for 2 years. He could have touched her taillight previously, but against this, how often do people touch the taillight of their car or somebody else's? Microscopic red and clear plastic fragments were found in the combined debris of John's sweatshirt and t-shirt that was consistent with material from Karen's taillight. Against that, the debris was collected weeks after John's death and passed through Proctor before the State Police Crime Lab with no documented chain of custody until March 14th, 2022. The state police forensic scientist said it was a possibility the plastic was from a taillight, not for certain. There were scuff marks that could have been from John's jeans. However, this was not proven to be caused by John. There was a dent with missing paint under Karen's back window that was possibly due to John's drinking glass in his outstretched hand and arm. Karen admitted that she removed a piece of glass stuck in John's nose when she found him. Against that, no human tissue or blood was found on the SUV. John's hand did not have any fractures from holding the glass that could have been hit by Karen's SUV. How would John's glass get hit at 23 miles per hour and shatter down and stay on the bumper? Karen admitted John left her car with a glass from the bar. There was a mark on the back of Karen's SUV that could have been from that glass. It makes no sense for John to have gone inside, got attacked and the glass broken inside, and the attackers picked up the pieces and brought them outside and put them on the lawn and street as opposed to throwing the glass in the garbage. A piece of hair was found on the rear of Karen's SUV, and an expert stated with 95% confidence that at least 99.895% of the population can be excluded as being a source of the hair sample, but John and his maternal relatives could not. Against that, Karen and John spent a lot of time together, so it could have been transferred another time or been from his mother, niece, or nephew. 2 photos of the hair from different angles in the Canton Police Department garage appeared to show different lengths and direction that the defense team suggested was tampering. The 8:22 a.m. police dashcam video shows Karen's SUV the first time a police officer was near it, and there was a large amount of red plastic missing from her taillight. There was no evidence that Proctor or any other officer planted taillight pieces at Fairview. State police scientists reassembled the various pieces and mostly recreated what was missing from Karen's taillight. Any accusation of police planting 47 pieces of taillight over several weeks does not make sense. Karen told several people she damaged her taillight, including Jen at 5:05 a.m., before Karen backed into John's car. How and where did Karen damage her taillight if it was not by hitting John? Where are those pieces? Karen admitted showing Kerry and Jen her taillight before they found John, and Karen picked pieces out in John's driveway. Against this, there is missing video from when Karen's SUV entered the Canton Police Department garage and Proctor was there. However, the 3 videos before that showed a large amount of taillight was missing, and Proctor didn't need to tamper with it. John's right sneaker came off, which is known to happen in vehicle strikes. It was found at the curb. His hat was also found under the snow. Against that, this does not prove he was hit by Karen. John's injuries were mostly on the right side of his body. He had many abrasions on the top of his right arm, a right knee abrasion, small laceration on his right upper eyelid. John's jeans had a large stain on the left back pocket, as if he was hit from the right and landed on his left side. He also had marks on his right hand, possibly from paramedics. Dr. Scorti-Bello said John died from blunt impact injuries to his head and hypothermia, but his injuries were not consistent with a fist fight, and the right arm marks were on top of the arm, but not below. Dr. La Posada for the defense said John died from blunt force injuries to his head with a raised or rough object that he fell on, not a flat surface, and not hypothermia. In the against column, Karen's SUV's data did not indicate a collision. However, experts testified that the car computer usually only registers collisions with other vehicles due to their weight and force. John had a 0.5 centimeter abrasion on his right knee, which would not be consistent with a car accident. He had a small laceration on the left side of his nose and a faint scratch on the back of his left hand. His head wound was near center. Dr. Russell testified that a dog's upper teeth only make contact with the skin during some dog attacks, which could explain John not having any marks on the lower side of his right arm. Dr. Welcher is a 1/2 inch shorter than John, and his testing showed the paint transfer lined up nearly identical to John's right arm injuries. But I'm supposed to believe that John got bitten by a dog in the same area, but not on the bottom of his arm, and there was no dog saliva, hair, or DNA on John's sweatshirt, and defense expert Dr. Russell confirmed the marks on John's arm did not match the pattern of teeth of the Alberts dog. There was no record of the Alberts dog going after a human when there was not another dog present, plus data proved Karen's SUV was going in reverse within seconds of the time John locked his phone, and soon after he never moved again, but his phone never went in the house where the dog was. Against this, defense expert Dr. Rentschler said that Dr. Welcher's testing was not comprehensive and several experts testified John's injuries were not consistent with a car accident, but could be dog bites on John's arm, and sometimes dog bites don't make a mark from their lower teeth. The pig DNA found on John's sweatshirt could be from a dog eating a pig ear as a dog treat, but it seems odd that only pig DNA would transfer after a vicious dog attack, and not the dog's DNA, hair, or saliva. According to her father, in the hospital, Karen told him, quote,
"During your first discussions with Karen, did she believe she may have hit John?"
No. She felt she struck something. She said, "Dad, I think I struck something." I said, "What do you mean?" Right? This was in the hospital. Right? She says, "I remember, all right, backing up and hitting something."
The Reed family seems to have a habit of repeating things 3 times. All right, all right, all right. Who does he think he is, Matthew McConaughey? So if Karen remembered backing up and hitting something, when was that? Before her time in the hospital, her SUV went in reverse for 3 times. The 3-point turn on Cedar Crest, then at 24 miles per hour in front of the Alberts house soon after John exited her SUV, and at 5:07 a.m. into John's SUV in his driveway at 1 mile per hour. After that, Karen pulled into the McCabe's driveway, but Jen McCabe ended up driving her car back to John's house. Against this, people may argue this referred to Karen backing into John's car at 5:07 a.m., but she knew that was a different time and location where the only thing she could have hit was John's car, not an unknown something, and there was nothing to hit when she made the 3-point turn on Cedar Crest after mistakenly passing Fairview. So how did Karen get this various damage if she did not hit John? At 12:33 and 35 seconds a.m., Karen called John, but did not leave a voicemail until her 8th call at 12:37. What was so urgent that Karen had to speak to John again 2 minutes after leaving him at the Alberts house? If Karen went in reverse at a high rate of speed, she would have passed John after he fell to the ground, and her constant calling was likely because she wanted to find out if he had gotten off the ground after she left. It could have been that she was worried she was going to be in trouble for angrily going in reverse at a high speed, and probably worried that she unintentionally hurt him. When John didn't pick up the phone to confirm that he was okay, she left a voicemail that she effing hated him and created other reasons why he wouldn't answer the phone that weren't a result of her actions. As Karen reversed after John exited her SUV, police testing proved that her car would beep if there was an obstruction close to her car and also show a warning on her dashboard display. It seems unlikely Karen would not remember this, but she has never explained the contradiction to her claim that she dropped John at the driveway, how her SUV got multiple damages, or why she floored it in reverse. Against this, people say the SUV data was interpreted wrong, and the 24 miles per hour in reverse was when the tow truck driver went in reverse at Karen's parents' house and the tires slipped on the snow, but the home security video doesn't prove that. The data for that trigger event shows her car was traveling 13 miles per hour forward before it went in reverse. The tow truck driver did not drive 13 miles per hour forward in Karen's parents' driveway. Karen told John's niece, Jen, and Kerry that she or a snowplow could have hit John and he could be dead before they even found his body. Why would Karen think that worst possibility if she also said that she last saw John at Waterfall and told a reporter that she saw John walk into the Alberts house? Jen McCabe and 3 paramedics, Tim Nuttall, Katie McLaughlin, and Anthony Flamati, heard Karen repeatedly say, "I hit him," after they asked how John suffered his injuries, as well as Kerry Roberts, John's niece, and paramedic Jason Becker, all testifying that Karen repeatedly asked, "Did I hit him? Could I have hit him?" In Karen's 5 a.m. phone call to Kerry, the first thing she said was, "Kerry, Kerry, Kerry, John's dead," and then she hung up. Officer Sarif was first on scene. He testified that Karen kept saying, "This is all my fault. This is my fault. I did this." If Karen's last memory of John was him walking into the Alberts house, why would she tell at least 8 people that she was the one responsible for John lying dead on the lawn? Shouldn't she have been screaming, "Who did this to him in that house?" instead of saying she did it to him with her car? In a TV interview, Karen admitted she said, "I hit him."
Did I hit him? I know I said I hit him, but did I really say it as many times as law enforcement's claiming I said it?
In Karen's second call to Kerry, she said John had not returned home after going out drinking the night before. Kerry testified that Karen said, "I think something happened to John. I think he got hit by a plow. He didn't come home last night. We drank so much I don't remember anything from last night." But then later in TV interviews, Karen acts like she didn't drink that much. Why would she assume he was killed by a plow if she left him at Waterfall Bar or dropped him off outside the Alberts? Karen and her defense attorneys tried to make it appear that Karen did not drink that much, so if she wasn't drunk, why can't she remember everything? Against this, testing showed Karen was legally drunk at 9 a.m., so she may not remember everything. However, she did remember Jen referencing John's ex-girlfriend as they approached Fairview. We're supposed to believe she has false memories of John walking in the Alberts door, but not remember fighting with John and hearing her car warning system beep as she floored it in reverse, and almost certainly would have seen John on the ground as she pulled away. The waterfall video at 12:11 a.m. shows cars with snow on the side window. Karen's SUV was on video at 12:15 and 12:18 a.m., but it's hard to tell how much snow was on her side windows that may have prevented her from seeing John walking on the road as she went in reverse, but her SUV's backup camera had a 360 view, blind spot warning lights on the side mirrors, and made beeping noises to alert her of objects nearby. Next, I'm going to review Karen's phone calls with Jen. 4:53 a.m. Karen said they got in a fight, she left John at the Waterfall Bar, and he did not come home. 5:05 a.m. Jen told Karen she saw her SUV outside the Alberts house. Karen wondered if she could have hit John and talked about her taillight. 2 minutes later, Karen turned her SUV on, slowly backed into John's car, and drove around Canton looking for John. The night before, after Karen left Waterfall, she did a 3-point turn after passing Fairview. Google Maps shows no mailbox or anything Karen could have backed into. Then she parked outside the Alberts and finally pulled into John's garage. How would Karen know at 5:05 a.m. there was damage to her taillight? She connected to John's Wi-Fi at 12:36 a.m., then called John 7 times before turning her SUV off at 12:42 a.m. and walked inside. She left a 12:42 a.m. voicemail that only has the sound of her car and taking steps that she said were inside and not to look at the back of her SUV, but it's unknown if she got out in the 6 minutes before she turned her car off. At 4:38 a.m., Karen called her mother and then John and others. Did she wake up and walk in the garage and saw her taillight damage, and that prompted the string of phone calls? What was so important that Karen didn't care about waking up her mother? Karen returned to John's garage to leave at 5:07 a.m. to drive around and to get Jen, and that is when she tapped John's car backing out of his garage. She knew the Ring camera would capture her right taillight hitting John's car. It is unknown if that was the first time in 2 years of spending many nights at his home that Karen hit his car despite her SUV's warning system. Did she get out of her SUV in between 12:36 to 12:42 a.m. phone calls and saw her taillight was damaged, and that is why that Ring video is missing? Dr. Welcher proved the 1 mile/hour collision with John's SUV was not capable of breaking her taillight. If Karen didn't hit John, how did she get a broken taillight and large dent? In the Against This column, Karen said she talked to her mother often and reached out to get her opinion on what was happening. She said there was a blizzard with young children unattended, and John had never disappeared like that. Karen didn't know if something went wrong, or if John took advantage of Karen by ignoring her so she would watch the kids while he stayed out drinking. The problem with this is that Karen and John talked to Jen as they left Waterfall, and Karen drove her SUV while John called Jen twice to get directions for them both to go continue drinking at the Alberts house while John's nephew was sleeping at a friend's, and his niece was likely asleep at 12:15 a.m. because she testified she went to bed at 11 p.m. Karen's story number 1 on January 29th, she told police she had stomach issues and dropped John off. This indicates she was okay with John continuing to drink and Karen would return to his house. There was no confusion or conflict about where John was. Karen's story number 2, years later, Karen saw John skip up the Alberts driveway and open the side door after Karen asked him to make sure they were at the correct home, despite Waze and Jen confirming the location. Karen said she called John a few minutes after he didn't confirm it was okay to come inside, but he didn't answer, so Karen drove away angry and did not walk to the door to make sure John was okay. However, 3 witnesses proved they were the ones who parked at the driveway, and John never exited Karen's SUV by the flagpole until after the pickup truck pulled away. Phone records proved Karen didn't call John until 9 minutes after they arrived at the Alberts, which was after she drove away, not while she waited. This indicates Karen spent about 7 minutes in her SUV with John parked outside the Alberts house and surely would remember the reason neither of them exited for an extended period of time. By the time John got out, they would have agreed he would stay and she would leave, or argued that he would stay and she would leave. 2 minutes later, Karen left John a voicemail screaming, "John, I effing hate you," which indicates they argued that John wanted to stay and Karen wanted to leave, so Karen should not have worried that John ignored her messages after that because she knew he got out of her SUV to go inside the party. In Karen's 2020 interview, she said she was just going to drive around in the 2 square miles that we spent the preceding night. After about 20 minutes of driving around, I go to get Jen. Data showed it was more like 30 minutes, but I'm not criticizing Karen for the discrepancy. However, at 5:05 a.m., Jen told Karen they saw her SUV outside 34 Fairview Road, but Karen immediately got in her SUV at 5:07 a.m. and drove to the Waterfall Bar, passed the library at 5:15 a.m., then about 20 minutes later arrived at Jen's house saying they need to go to Fairview. Why couldn't Karen have immediately driven to Fairview on her own at 5:07 a.m.? Karen did not drive to 34 Fairview Road alone at 6 a.m. to discover his body. Did she drive by Fairview before she arrived at Jen's? Cameras showed her SUV near the bars. But then there's about 20 minutes that are unaccounted for. This does not prove she drove by Fairview alone before 5:30 a.m. and knew John was in the snow. Karen's phone data did not prove that she connected to the cell phone tower antenna near 34 Fairview in the missing 20 minutes between approximately 5:15 to 5:35 a.m. People may argue Karen did not know the address of 34 Fairview Road, but she admitted John told her it was 34 Fairview when he was on the phone with Jen getting directions, and Karen drove from 34 Fairview to John's house 4.5 hours earlier. Karen talked to Procter & Buchanan on January 29th. Quote, "The defendant indicated that she first observed the broken taillight in the morning and did not know how she had broken it the previous evening. Karen told police she broke it the previous evening, not at 5:07 a.m. when she backed into John's car. Karen drove from the Alberts to John's, pulled in the garage, and walked in the door. At 5:05 a.m., she talked to Jen and got in her car at 5:07 a.m., pulled out, lightly tapped John's car, drove around Canton for 30 minutes, and pulled in Jen's driveway and then walked out and started screaming Jen's name. Jen was the one who drove Karen's car to John's, and the Ring video does not show Karen stop or stare at her rear taillight. So when did Karen observe her taillight was broken? She showed Jen and Kerry when they left John's around 5:52 a.m., but she told the 2 women before that about her damaged taillight. Karen did not pull into John's garage for another 6 minutes after she arrived. She called him several times, but had time to get out of her car and see if there was any damage before she pulled into his garage, but this Ring video is missing. Jen and Kerry testified Karen showed them her taillight and it was cracked and missing pieces, but John's Ring video showed they all went inside when they arrived at John's house, but the video of them leaving is missing. Karen said on ABC News, quote, "I had told both Jen and Kerry that I cracked my taillight, and I said I just hit my car on top of everything, but I did not look at the damage. And both women said, it's cracked, calm down, you cracked your taillight, you're okay, let's go look for John," end quote. So if Karen did not look at the damage, how did she know she cracked her taillight? Karen also did an interview with Gretchen Voss and stated, quote,
"When my car was seized, there was a few small pieces of taillight missing that I had picked out at John's at 5:45 before we drove over to Fairview. I'm showing Jim and Kerry, look what I just did to my light, and I'm worried that there's gonna be some kind of electric short circuit. There's like the bulb is showing and some of the red plastic's missing. So I picked pieces out of the light housing that had kind of collapsed within the light and dropped them in John's driveway."
Karen said she hit her car, but did not explain how. She said it just happened, which could mean hitting John's car at 1 mile per hour at 5:07, but the Ring video and Dr. Welcher proved that did not cause any damage. But as she pulled out of John's driveway at 5:07 a.m., her right taillight was damaged. According to Jen, Karen told her on the phone that she could have hit John and talked about her taillight before Karen backed into John's car. More conflicting statements from Karen. She did not look at the damage, yet she admitted she looked at the damage with Kerry and Jen, and pieces were missing, and she picked some out. Karen said she dropped pieces of her taillight in John's driveway, but no one ever found them. When state police reconstructed the pieces found outside the Alberts house, Only the top left pieces were never found. Against this, the defense argued Karen's taillight did not have the same amount of damage at 4:12 p.m. when the tow truck seized it at Karen's parents compared to Karen's light on February 1st at Canton Police Department. But Officer Barros admitted in trial too that the 5:07 a.m. and 8:22 a.m. ring videos were the same condition that he saw around 4:12 p.m. People say the police planted taillight pieces at 34 Fairview after Karen's SUV arrived at Canton Police Department at 5:31 p.m., but the search team did not find any pieces in the snow until 5:45 p.m. There is no evidence someone broke Karen's taillight at Canton Police Department, drove to 34 Fairview, and joined the search and planted pieces. Although some people say the missing video from Canton Police is when they cracked her taillight and drove it to 34 Fairview. The ring video of Karen, Jen, and Kerry arriving at John's house revealed that Karen moves her left hand in an odd motion to either smack her right arm or touched her right taillight. Her hand seems to be on her jacket as she moves away from the taillight, but it's very close to the light, and I don't know why she would hit her own arm or hit the taillight. Against this, it's too blurry to determine, and what would be the purpose of her smacking her taillight. When Karen's dad drove her SUV from the hospital and John's house to her parents' house at 2:12 p.m., they got out and both of them stood at the back right taillight and looked at it before the video stops. This was before the police had access to her SUV. Karen has no explanation for her taillight and the dent and paint chip damage. As I said before, Dr. Welcher proved the 5:07 a.m. 1 mile per hour reversing into John's SUV would not have even touched Karen's taillight to John's SUV. Karen and her father looked toward the right taillight when they were dropped off at John's house. Her brother barely glanced at it while walking past. Another female looked at it for a few seconds. Karen's brother and another male wiped snow from parts of their car and Karen's, but did not touch her rear taillight. Against this, they did not stand there and inspect it like the 2:12 p.m. video at her parents' house. Why did Karen call and text John repeatedly over 50 times if he got out of her SUV and was going inside to continue hanging out with people they just hung out with? They had just confirmed the location with Jen, but John did not exit Karen's SUV for 6 or 7 minutes after they parked. What took so long for either one of them to get out? This does not indicate John got out of Karen's SUV on good terms. Against this, Karen may have convinced some people that she saw John walk into Albert's house and he was a jerk for not coming to get her or answer her messages, but the witnesses and data prove that story was a lie. When I started looking at this case, I had an open mind, but one of the things I don't like about Karen is that she repeatedly tries to make John O'Keefe look like a jerk that he walked inside the Alberts house and never contacted her to say it was okay to come in. She also accuses him of not answering her phone call when she called outside the Alberts house, but the data proved she didn't call until she drove away. She has no problem trying to place blame on John when the data and eyewitnesses prove that wasn't even true. Karen acted guilty the morning John died, telling many people she hit John. She did not offer condolences to John's mom, niece, or nephew, and told John's sister-in-law they would probably never see each other again, and that Karen had to remember the bad times so she would not be sad John was dead. If Karen knew John had gone inside the Alberts house, she would have acted like a victim who needed to mourn the loss of John like everyone else in his family. Instead, she just got her things and left John's home. Later, Karen explained she thought John's mom saw her broken taillight and assumed Karen hit him, but Karen should have explained the reason why the back right of her SUV sustained damage and told John's family they all needed to figure out what happened inside the Alberts home. She didn't do that. Canton police officer Stephen Sarif, the first on the scene, testified Karen kept saying, quote, "This is all my fault. This is my fault. I did this," end quote. He saw footprints around John's body, but none from the direction of the house. Against this, in 5.5 hours, snow could have covered the tracks from the house, but some people argue the plow driver did not see John at 2:45 and 3:15 and suggest he was put outside later by somebody inside the house. At 12:59 a.m., voicemail number 3, Karen said, quote, "John, I'm here with your effing kids. Nobody knows where the F you are, you effing pervert," end quote. Why did Karen say nobody knows when she hadn't asked anyone if they knew where John was? Or if she saw him walk in the Alberts house 30 minutes earlier, she knew where he was. Why didn't Karen complain, "Why didn't you call me?" to say it was okay to come inside? I have no idea why she called him a pervert, especially when she was the one who kissed Brian Higgins and texted that she would hook up with him. 1:04 a.m. Karen texted John she was at her house in Mansfield, but she was at John's. What happened in the car between Waterfall and 34 Fairview to make Karen call John a pervert who she hated and caused her to lie about her whereabouts? Karen called John 14 times between 12:33 a.m. after she left Fairview until she turned her SUV off at 12:42 a.m. in John's garage. Once inside John's house, she called or texted him 20 times without any response, but never thought to get back in her car and drive 4 minutes back to Fairview to figure out why John was not answering the phone. She never contacted Higgins, who was inside the Alberts house, but she called her mom at 1:14 a.m. She left John voicemails calling him a loser and pervert who was having sex with another woman, and then Karen went to sleep. At 4:38 and 4:42 a.m., Karen also called her mom. What was so important to wake up her parents? Against this, in a TV interview, Karen said she would call her mother for her opinion and said she was concerned John did not come home or answer his messages. Another reason for Karen being responsible for John's death, John's cell phone temperature steadily decreased, indicating he never went in a warm house. Canton paramedic Jason Becker took Karen to the hospital in the ambulance. He testified Karen was sad that the last thing she said to John was during an argument, but did not detail what the argument was or what she said. Karen asked Jen to Google hypothermia or how long it takes for someone to die in the cold, because Karen knew John did not go inside Fairview and die inside and then was put on the lawn. She knew something happened when she drove in reverse. Against this, people argue Jen searched how long it takes to die in the cold at 2:27 a.m., but two experts proved Jen's searches were at 6:23 and 6:24 a.m., and dashcam video confirmed Jen's story that she and Karen were off camera at that time. Karen said while Jen was giving John directions to 34 Fairview, Jen said it was near Ashley's house. Ashley hooked up with John before he dated Karen. So how does Karen remember that level of detail, but not a few minutes later, of when and where John got out of her SUV, and that Karen did not actually call John until 12:33 after she drove away? Karen's SUV accelerated up to 24.2 miles per hour, then the speed dropped to 23.6 miles per hour, half a second later, as the steering wheel jostled slightly, which is consistent with a pedestrian strike. Starting at 4:38 a.m., Karen called and texted her mom, John, Jen, Kerry, Michael Camerano, and Katie Camerano, but never called 911. ARCA stated that they didn't think John's arm hit Karen's taillight at 24 miles per hour, but in their 24-mile-per-hour testing, the damage to the test Lexus taillight was similar to Karen's damage. Against this, Dr. Rentschler testified the number of holes in John's sweatshirt right sleeve did not match the number of abrasions on John's arm, and there were multiple directions of the abrasions. The defense argued the holes in the back of John's sweatshirt were made by state police lab scientists and were not present when John's body was discovered. Text messages between John and people inside 34 Fairview indicate he was not inside after he and Karen arrived at 12:24 a.m. 12:20 a.m., Brian Higgins sent a text, "You coming here?" John read it at 12:25. 12:27, Jen texted, "Here?" John read that message 15 seconds later. 12:31 and 47 seconds, Jen texted, "Pull behind me." John read it at 12:32 and 6 seconds. At 12:31 and 56 seconds, John walked for 20 seconds. Did John not respond to those three text messages? Because he was arguing with Karen in her SUV. Against this, Jen walked to the Alberts front door and saw Karen's SUV at several places. 1 in front of the door, 2 at the flagpole, 3 further up from the flagpole, and 4 gone, but is not sure if she went to the door 5 times and texted John after each. Just a quick review of her 5 text messages. 12:27 saw the SUV in the front and texted, "Here." 12:31 saw the SUV near the flagpole and texted, "Pull behind me." 12:40, "Hello." 12:42, "Where are you?" 12:45, "Hello." Jen texted "Pull behind me" at 12:31 and 47 seconds, and 9 seconds later, at 12:31 and 56 seconds, John started walking for the first time since they arrived at Fairview. However, Jen said she saw the SUV further up a third time, but that doesn't seem possible based on the time data from John's phone and Karen's SUV. Originally, experts said Karen's SUV went in reverse between 12:31:38 and 12:31:43 a.m., but this time does not seem accurate because Jen texted 4 seconds later at 12:31:47 and said the SUV was parked near the flagpole. Unless Jen saw the SUV at the front door, and then she turned around and started typing the text and then sent it. For trial 2, the phone expert adjusted the SUV reverse trigger event, hitting 30% throttle, at some point between 12:32:04 and 12:32:12, 17 to 25 seconds after Jen sent that text. I don't understand how Jen could have seen the SUV at a third location since her next text was at 12:40 when Karen was parked in John's driveway and John's phone stopped moving after 12:32:16. I don't see how it benefits Jen to lie that she saw the SUV in 3 places as opposed to 2, but several other witnesses saw Karen's SUV at up to 4 locations on the street. Jen's husband Matt saw the SUV parked in front of the house, near the flagpole, past the fire hydrant, in line with the trees that separate the neighbor's property line, and then the SUV was gone. Police reports stated that both Jen and Matt said they saw the SUV driving away from the Alberts house, but the police mischaracterized other statements from people in the reports, so it's unknown what the truth is. At trial 2, Attorney Jackson said during trial 1, Jen agreed with him when he asked if she was at the door 5 times and then would text John after each time. Jen replied she may not have been clear on that detail, but she is clear she went to the door 3 times, but doesn't remember if the SUV was still out front when she texted hello at 12:40. Carrie's rear left window was covered in snow and possibly tinted. How did Karen see John as they approached Fairview in the snowstorm? Both Carrie and Jen did not notice John from the front seat. Against this, Karen said John's body stuck out like a buffalo on a prairie, and she was expecting to find him on the side of the road. Karen left John a voicemail at 6:03 a.m. that starts with Karen outside screaming after she found John's body. Why did she call John for the first time since 5:36 and not hang up her phone, but leave it recording in Carrie's car? Jen said Karen directed them to 34 Fairview because she knew where John was. Jen testified Karen was, quote, screaming between Carrie and I, so I'm not really sure how she saw John over here when her head is up here screaming and then looking down and texting. Did Karen dial at that moment to purposely capture it on voicemail? Karen told police she made a 3-point turn after dropping John off. But when they asked her to recall how she left the scene again, Karen terminated the interview. If she is innocent, why did she stop cooperating with the police? Karen's SUV data showed the 3-point turn before they arrived at Fairview, not after. Against this, it is recommended to not talk to the police without an attorney, and some people say with an attorney. Why did Karen drive to Jen's house and yell they needed to drive to the Alberts house after Karen just drove through town for almost 30 minutes supposedly looking for John? Why couldn't Karen drive to Fairview by herself before going to Jen's if Jen told her during their 5:05 a.m. phone call she saw Karen parked outside Fairview? Karen was so frantic to get in contact with John from 12:33 to 5 a.m., but when she got in her car at 5:07 a.m., she drove to the second and third places she last saw John, the Canton bars, not the last place she saw him at the Alberts home. Did Karen drive by Fairview before going to Jen's? Karen's first assumption was maybe the bars had let people in after hours and that John got killed by a snowplow, but Karen has also stated the last time she saw John was walking into a house with the friends they just spent the past hour having fun with. Against this, Karen's cell phone connected to towers around Canton, and there was not strong evidence to show that Karen drove by the Alberts house alone before she arrived at Jen's house. At 1:27 p.m. on January 29th, Karen Googled DUI attorneys. Trooper Proctor called her at 1:19 p.m. Against that, anyone should call an attorney if they drove drunk and just talked to the police. Dr. Welcher's analysis proved Karen's taillight did not make contact with John's car at less than 1 mile per hour. So Karen damaged her light before 12:36 a.m. when she returned to John's home. Karen never explained how her SUV had a major dent with chipped paint and a broken taillight. She ignored text messages from Brian Higgins for 6 days. The day John died, at 11:54 a.m., she finally replied with 2 words, John died. She knew Higgins left for 34 Fairview before she left Waterfall. Why wouldn't she text him, did you hear John died? I saw him go inside. What happened in there? Please call me. Why didn't she call him or text him to ask where John was before they found his body? If Karen told John she was having stomach issues and dropped him off at the party on good terms, why would she need to call him repeatedly and say she hated him, accuse him of cheating, and say no one knew where he was? She sat outside John's house for 6 minutes calling him and leaving rude voicemails. If she had stomach issues, why didn't she go inside to use the bathroom? Karen stopped cooperating with police and never gave police her phone's passcode, and it took them about 6 months for software to finally crack her code. John's Ring security videos are missing 3 videos. One is Karen getting home from 34 Fairview at 12:36 a.m. Next, Karen leaving John's house with Jen and Kerry and showing her picking pieces of her damaged taillight. And third, Karen's SUV leaving John's home for the last time. But there is video of her father and brother wiping snow off their cars. It seems to benefit Karen more than the police to have deleted these videos. Against this, Karen had no access to John's phone since it was under his body at Fairview. She would not have access to John's computer after she left John's house with her father, so she could not delete missing video number 3. Trooper Guarino said there was no evidence on John's computers that Karen accessed Ring on January 29th. Trooper Proctor had access to Ring on John's phone, but said he did not delete any videos. He submitted 2 search warrants to Ring to get the missing videos, but was told Ring had no record of who accessed the account to delete them, and Ring did not have them. Trooper DeChico viewed John's Ring videos and wrote a note with 0041 signifying the time of 12:41 a.m., and he wrote, "Taillights from driveway, I think she arrived home." Proctor's report reflected bullet points of important Ring video times, but Proctor said there was no date on DeChico's note, and they looked at videos from many different dates. Karen connected to John's Wi-Fi at 12:36 a.m., so it is unknown if DeChico, referencing 12:41, was on January 29th. But it seems odd that Karen would also have returned to John's home at 12:41 a.m. on another night. People assume because her phone connected to John's Wi-Fi at 12:36, that meant she was in his house or near the garage, but maybe it connected when she was parked on the street. Karen turned off her car at 12:42 and 8 seconds. Maybe she did pull into John's driveway at 12:41, but was parked on the street for some reason. In the 2 weeks before John's death, Karen's text messages with Brian Higgins revealed she was frustrated with John and willing to cheat on him. Did that frustration reach a boiling point after all of their arguing on January 28th, and then spill over when they got to the Alberts house and John finally got out of Karen's car while arguing? Her frustration pushed her gas pedal down to 74% throttle to catch up to John in reverse. Karen never spoke again to various people she was friendly with. Against that, her phone was seized. Karen did not go to John's wake or funeral. Against that, she was concerned his family thought she was responsible. At some point, John's family told her to stay away. Reasons Karen would not want to go inside the Alberts house: stomach issues, she wanted to drive home before the blizzard got bad, she argued with John in the car and was in a bad mood, or Karen wanted to go home so John's niece was not home alone. 2 weeks after Karen accused John of cheating, and 2 weeks before John died, Karen planted a kiss on Brian Higgins at John's house and told Higgins she was happy with John, but things have deteriorated. Karen said she would have hooked up with Higgins. Karen ignored him at Waterfall, but she pulled up to Fairview, and although she said she did not see any cars that she recognized, she likely knew Higgins had a Jeep because she recently went to his house. Did Karen refuse to go in the Alberts house because she didn't want to be close to Higgins and could not avoid him like she did at Waterfall? Against that, she said the house was dark and she wasn't sure if they were at the right house. Eye roll. However, there were 9 people having a party inside and the front door was open, and John used Waze to find the house. They were at the right house. After returning to John's, Karen slept on the couch but had her own bedroom at John's house. If she dropped John off due to her stomach issues, why would she want to sleep downstairs? Why did she want to know when John walked in the door? Was it to confirm that he got up off the ground after she drove away from Fairview? Against that, it can be argued that John wasn't answering her calls and Karen wanted to know when he got home, but she told police on January 29th that she dropped John off, so why was there a need to contact him dozens of times and know when he got home? In her TV interview on the ID network, Karen said, quote,
Totally was Jen McCain. Jen McCain, it's me or her. Either I'm going down, Jen, or you are.
I saw that and I thought, who talks like that? Where does Karen's animosity for Jen come from? The majority of evidence points to Karen causing John's death and not Jen, who was texting John repeatedly while he was with Karen outside Fairview, and Jen was inside with other people at the party. Against this, people say Karen is innocent and framed and angry at Jen for partaking in some kind of conspiracy. I'm not one of those people, as you can see by this long-ass spreadsheet. The day Karen found John dead, she frantically talked to many people, civilians, paramedics, and police, but was not frantic that someone else could be responsible other than her. Karen heard Jen giving directions to John and knew Jen was inside when Karen dropped John off. Yet Karen never questioned Jen as they were on the phone or driving around before 6 a.m. Like, hey, I saw John go up to the side door. What happened when he got inside? When Jen said John never came inside, but they saw Karen's SUV, Karen should have argued that she saw John go in the side door. Karen repeatedly screamed, "Jen, Carrie," after she found John, but was only heard saying, "I hit him. Could I have hit him? Did I hit him? Is he dead?" Because if she hit him and the result was that John died, that meant the more trouble Karen would be in. Against that, people may say Karen was still intoxicated and traumatized to think rationally, but the data does not point to someone inside the Alberts house wounding John. This is essentially a double entry, but I'm going to read it again, because I think it's a big issue. Karen never asked Brian Higgins what happened to John once he got inside. After not replying to texts from Higgins for 6 days, at 11:54 a.m., almost 6 hours after she found her boyfriend of 2 years dead in the snow, Karen read that Higgins texted her while at Waterfall Bar, and Karen replied, "John died." Karen made no effort to find out who was responsible and if Higgins could help solve the mystery. She had exchanged many flirty texts with Higgins over the prior 2 weeks, but was not capable of reaching out to him at 5 a.m. or later to ask John's friend and fellow law enforcement officer and person inside the Alberts house to find John's killer. Against that, people could argue Karen did not want to interact with Higgins after she went to his house a week or so earlier, and it did not end well, but her boyfriend was missing and then found dead, yet she made no effort to find out who did it. That day, she told police she never saw John go inside, but years later in TV interviews, she said she saw him go in the Alberts side door. Karen only started blaming other people after a man called her attorney, David Yannetti, and said to look into the other people inside the Alberts party as suspects. As stated in her ID interview, the day John died, Karen told attorney Yannetti she could have hit John's foot or knee, but why would she be open to that possibility if a few hours earlier she told police she dropped John off and made a 3-point turn, but her car data and John's phone showed she only made a 3-point turn after she missed the turn on Fairview? If she drove forward after John got out, how could she have hit him if he walked in the opposite direction of where her car was going? Did Karen try to cover for herself to say she made the 3-point turn after John got out and she could have hit him without knowing it, and hoped her car data would not be accurate enough to show exactly when and where the 3-point turn happened? Karen did not give police her phone password, and it took police about 6 months to crack it. If you know you are innocent and want to clear your name so the real killers of your boyfriend can be found, do you hinder the investigation? Against that, people may argue that Karen was immediately the main suspect, and her attorney would handle her defense. But Karen talked to journalists more than the police. Her actions are more about saving herself than getting justice for John, just like she said in this clip. Play that clip, funky white boy.
Now I just want to save myself, and I just want to be who I was before this, and I care less about fighting for John.
Karen's comments to Erin O'Keefe, who is the wife of Paul, John's brother. Karen texted her on January 28th, quote, "Just another day. I wish I didn't talk to an O'Keefe after 2004, end quote, after Karen said they fought about taking his niece to Dunkin' Donuts in the morning. After John's body was found, Karen said she did not think she would see them again, and she had to remember the bad times, so she wasn't sad that John was dead. Karen said she dropped John at the party because she did not want to go. Karen didn't offer any condolences or try to find who killed John. She just gave up and said she would never see his family again. Phone expert Ian Whiffen noted that between 12:25 and 6 a.m., records of 10 meters accuracy or less of John's phone location showed the center point was never in the Alberts house after they arrived, only on the lawn. The center dots can indicate movement or refinement of the phone's accuracy with the antenna and signal. John's phone was likely near the flagpole and didn't move the entire night, according to Whiffen. Most of John's phone location data accurately showed on the road as Karen drove them to Fairview, indicating the location data is reliable. In all of Karen's interviews and variety of stories, she never mentioned the following. John used the Waze navigation app to find the Alberts house and closed it 12 seconds before they parked at 34 Fairview Road, and when their location was passing the house next to the Alberts. There should have been no question Karen parked at the right house. She never mentioned driving her SUV forward a few times based on eyewitness testimony of her SUV being at different locations. She never mentioned going in reverse at a high speed. The day John died, Karen told police she made a 3-point turn after dropping John off because she had stomach issues, but the car and John's phone data showed that was a lie. There were people standing at the glass front door of the Alberts house looking to see when they were coming in. They said Karen is parked directly in front of it. So Karen should have seen that door and people while looking at and talking to John for 7 minutes after they parked. I never saw her mention the pickup truck that was parked behind her for several minutes before it drove by. She never mentioned Julie Nagel exiting and entering the home after standing in the driveway for several minutes. She never mentioned arguing with John in the car, at least publicly in her TV interviews. Karen said she pulled up and wanted John to check it out, and he got out. The police report stated, quote, "The defendant informed Miss McCabe that she and the victim had gotten into an argument the last time that she had seen him," end quote. Karen also said something similar in the ambulance to the hospital, but never in TV interviews. John's niece testified, quote, "She was just pacing down the hallway, asking what could have happened. She said, maybe I did something. Later, maybe a snowplow hit him," end quote. John's niece heard Karen's morning calls with Jen McCabe, and Karen changed her story multiple times, initially stating that she and John got into an argument and she dropped him off. Based on their many text messages on January 28th, it's not hard to believe they continued their fight after they left Waterfall and had time alone. John's niece and nephew told police that Karen and John had argued frequently before his death, and John told Karen he needed a break and their relationship had run its course, and he told her to leave his house, but Karen refused to leave or end their relationship. We're almost done, with this spreadsheet at least. Finally, John's phone data revealed the following. His GPS location was never in the Alberts house. At 12:24 a.m., they parked outside the Alberts house at 34 Fairview Road. Also at 12:24 a.m., John read the text message from Brian Higgins, "You coming here?" 31 seconds after arrival. John did not reply. 12:27 a.m., Jen texted John, "Here?" and he read that message 15 seconds later without replying. 12:29, Jen called John. Phone records showed it was answered for 7 seconds, but Jen testified she never spoke to him after giving directions at 12:18. 12:30, John's phone disconnected from Karen's SUV Bluetooth, so it likely had not been inside the Alberts home for the 6 minutes since he and Karen parked. Between 12:31 and 56 seconds and 12:32 and 16 seconds, John took 36 steps in those 20 seconds. This was the first time in the 7 minutes since parking that John took steps. 12:32 a.m., John looked at Jen's message stating to pull behind her car, but did not reply. And 3 seconds later, he locked his phone, and 7 seconds after that, John's phone stopped moving until it was found under his body near the flagpole around 6 a.m. Also at 12:32 a.m., Karen's car went in reverse up to 24 miles per hour. However, the time is challenged by the defense. 1 minute later at 12:33 was the first time Karen called or texted John since they arrived at 34 Fairview after she pulled away, which goes against her statements on TV. At 12:36 a.m., Karen connected to John's home Wi-Fi. The quickest online video I saw, traveling from the Alberts to John's house, was 3 minutes and 40 seconds, which could make this time possible. 1 minute later at 12:37, Karen left John a voicemail screaming, which proves that Karen was angry after John got out of her car at the Alberts. She had been frustrated he did not want to talk to her earlier in the day. Was she frustrated enough again that she slammed her foot on the gas pedal in reverse to catch up to John after he walked out of her car? I just reviewed my spreadsheet. Karen did it, with reasons for and against Karen being responsible for John's death. I have another spreadsheet. Someone else did it. So as I was researching and come across a fact or a rumor that might point to somebody else instead of Karen causing John's death, I put it on the spreadsheet. Similar to the other spreadsheet, on the left-hand side, reasons for someone else causing John's death. Then I try to think of things possibly conflicting that in the against column. This spreadsheet has 45 rows. So, first reason for someone else other than Karen causing John's death. John's phone moved 87 meters, 80 steps, and 3 flights climbed between 12:21 and 10 seconds and 12:24 and 22 seconds a.m., which means he was in the Alberts house and basement where he was attacked. Against this, the 3-point turn after Karen passed Fairview Road was confirmed by John's phone and Karen's SUV to show that he could not be walking and climbing stairs before they parked at 12:24 and 38 seconds a.m. Defense expert Green agreed John's first GPS location data point at the Alberts driveway was at 12:24:28 a.m. At 12:23, Ryan Nagel texted his sister Julie they were about to arrive at Fairview. Those 3 people in the truck behind Karen said John never got out in the estimated 4 to 7 minutes they testified they were there. Below that, I wrote, see longer explanation. And it's pretty long. There's debate about the 3 different clocks on an iPhone and which one was most accurate. Like when the data showed between 12:21 to 12:24 that John took 80 steps and went up or down 3 flights of stairs. A floor climbed is when the iPhone measures a change of approximately 10 feet. This is an important point that many people who think Karen is innocent claim as a fact, so I tried to analyze if it makes sense that John was going up and down stairs 3 times and was killed inside the Alberts house, but it doesn't make sense for several reasons. At 12:22 and 14 seconds a.m., a Celebrate report showed John's phone on stairs, but his phone location was a half-mile away from Fairview while Karen was driving, which brings up a separate point that if some phone data is wrong, how do we know which phone data is 100% correct? Also, phone expert Ian Whiffen tested holding his phone while driving around Canton, Mass., and it registered steps and stairs even though he was driving. Plus, 12 eyewitnesses and data showed John's GPS center location point was never in the Alberts house for him to even be able to use the stairs or get attacked by people or a dog. If you ignore that data and you want to believe John was killed inside the Alberts house, how do you account for 3 flights of stairs climbed? Did John walk through the side door, then down to the basement, back up to the first floor, then back down to the basement where he was attacked? If people inside wanted to attack him, why not do it the first time down in the basement, when his phone would have showed only 1 flight of stairs climbed? Did John walk in the side door, then upstairs to the second floor, back down to the main level, then down to the basement? It's all speculation, just like which of the people inside could have been the person to attack John. Nobody knows for sure. At the end of the 3 flights climbed data, after 12:24:22 a.m., the next time John's phone registered steps was 7.5 minutes later, for 20 seconds between 12:31:56 and 12:32:16. John's phone moved 36 steps and about 85 feet. So if John was dead in the basement and the group plotted a conspiracy over the next 6 minutes, then at least 2 people carried this 200-pound man's body to the front lawn and put his phone under his body. But why isn't there any phone data at 12:32 a.m. for 1 flight of stairs climbed going up, getting John's body out of the basement? Karen said she called John while she was parked at the Alberts driveway after he did not return to tell her it was okay to come inside. The first time Karen called John on January 29th was at 12:33 a.m. So why didn't Karen see several people drag John to the flagpole between 12:31 to 12:32? Things that make you go, Because the 3 people in the pickup truck said they were the ones who parked at the driveway. John never got out of Karen's SUV in front of them, and for Karen to connect to John's home Wi-Fi at 12:36, she had to be driving at 12:33, which meant Karen left her boyfriend at Fairview without making sure he was okay and didn't need a ride home, and she lied about what unfolded outside Fairview. Also, John's phone closed his Waze navigation app 4 seconds after the end of the alleged climbing up 3 flights of stairs. I don't know many people who keep the Waze app open and making noise still giving directions after they parked and are walking around a party inside a house. Data showed John was in Karen's car driving 17 miles per hour when he closed the Waze app at 12:24 and 26 seconds. One of the biggest pieces of data that goes against this theory that John was going up and down stairs and killed inside the Alberts home by his friends between 12:21 to 12:24:22 a.m. is you have to assume that 37 seconds after that movement ended, the killers took John's phone and held it up to his unconscious dead face at 12:24 and 59 seconds to use his Face ID to open his phone, and then opened the text message from Higgins asking, "You coming here?" But they did not delete that text message. Then the killers locked John's phone, and they had Jen text John at 12:27 asking, "Here?" They held John's phone to his dead face to read that message. Then they locked his phone again. Then at 12:29, Jen allegedly called John for 7 seconds, and at 12:30, John's phone disconnected from Karen's SUV's Bluetooth. At 12:31:47, the group of killers had Jen send John another text that said, "Pull behind me." 9 seconds later, at 12:31 and 56 seconds, John's phone started moving for the first time in 7.5 minutes since 12:24. It traveled 36 steps, approximately 85 feet, and while the phone was moving, someone held the phone to John's dead face at 12:32:04 to unlock it. And what did they do? They opened his Messages app and read the last text from Jen. Then at 12:32:09, pushed the lock button again. And 7 seconds later, at 12:32:16, John's phone was put on the ground between the flagpole and the street and never moved again. In those last 20 seconds of movement, John's phone moved 85 feet. The Albert's front stairs to the area where John was found, near the flagpole, was measured at 72 feet. So far, does that scenario seem plausible to you? If so, please don't go driving because you're intoxicated. So either several people carried or dragged John's body from the house to the lawn while another person held his phone to his dead face just to read a text message sent by Jen. Or if you are one of the people who believe the snowplow driver did not see John's body at 2 to 3 a.m. because you think John's body was in the Albert's basement or garage, that means someone had to put John's phone in front of his dead face at 12:32:04 and had 12 seconds to run outside to the flagpole to put his phone on the ground, and then later the killers put John's body on top of his phone. But after 3 a.m., the only people who may have been in the Albert's house were Brian, his wife, and his son, but there were no marks in the snow from John's body to the house when they found his body at 6 a.m. And Kerry said the grass under John's body did not have any snow, which would indicate John fell before most of the snow accumulated. Or against that, it could be argued that his body temperature melted the snow later. Also, you have to take into consideration that Jen, who was kind enough to help John with his niece for several years, would not be traumatized by John's sudden murder during the party, that she would then show the group the video for the song "It's Raining Men." This makes no sense, people. But if you think John was killed inside, this is how you have to think it went down. John's iPhone battery showed a consistent decline in temperature from 82 degrees Fahrenheit when he left Waterfall Bar. If he was in the Albert's basement, and that is why the snowplow driver did not see his body by the flagpole at 2:30 a.m., why was John's phone temperature 50 degrees Fahrenheit at 1:36 a.m. and had never moved from the flagpole since 12:32 a.m.? The 3 times of opening John's phone by putting it up to his face just to read text messages from people inside the house, then locking the phone each time, then moving for 20 seconds while John's face is looking at the phone and the phone never moved again, does not add up to a logical scenario, or data, or eyewitness testimony. So like Randy Jackson used to say on American Idol, it's a no for me, dog. I know the majority of people think Karen is innocent. Please explain a logical scenario, how and why the killers repeatedly held John's phone up to his dead face just to read text messages that 2 people already in the house sent. Also, did they put his phone near the flagpole at 12:32 and then put his body there after 3:30? Please make it make sense. Now back to the spreadsheet. The next reason for somebody else possibly killing John, the doctors from ARCA testified damage to Karen's SUV was inconsistent with hitting John. Against that, ARCA's 24-mile-per-hour testing showed the taillight broke similar to Karen's SUV damage, which her car data showed reached 23 to 24 miles per hour within seconds of John last using his phone. Every accident is different depending on many factors. Dr. Welcher's paint test showed the same area of arm contact that lined up with John's right arm, possibly hitting Karen's taillight. Karen admitted picking pieces of her damaged taillight before 6 a.m. John had taillight pieces in his clothing. and also his DNA was on the taillight. Next, several doctors stated John's injuries were not consistent with a car accident, did not appear to be caused by glass, plastic, a vehicle, or John hitting his head on grass. And also his body lacked bruising and fractures, so that means someone inside the Alberts house caused John's death. Dr. Rentschler testified the direction of abrasions on John's arm don't line up with motion or kinematics in Webster's pain test. Against that, John was 6'1", weighed over 200 pounds, was a police officer in his 40s and in good shape. There were pieces of plastic similar to Karen's taillight embedded in his clothing. John's DNA was on Karen's taillight. Also, a hair was found next to Karen's taillight. An expert stated with 95% confidence that at least 99.895% of the population can be excluded as being a source of the hair sample, but John and his maternal relatives could not. Several prosecution doctors testified John's head injury could have been caused by hitting the frozen ground. Dr. Scorti-Bello testified the knee scrape could have been from a sideswipe with a car, and the nose abrasion could be from glass or plastic. John's arm had dog bites, and the owners of 34 Fairview Road had a German Shepherd that had a history of not liking strangers and biting dogs and people, and the dog was rehomed after John's death. Several doctors with extensive experience testified they thought John's arm injuries were from a dog bite or claws. Pig DNA was on John's right sweatshirt sleeve, which meant the Alberts dog ate pig ear treats and then bit John. Against this, there was no dog DNA, hair, or saliva found on John. The Alberts dog got in a fight outside their house in May 2022, 3 months after John died. And the other dog owner tried to break it up and got injured, so the Alberts removed their dog from their home. Why would they not get rid of their dog in February, March, or April if they wanted to hide her as possibly being responsible for John's arm injuries? The injury pattern on John's arm seems odd that a dog would bite the top of his arm, let go, bite the middle of his arm, let go, and then bite the front of his arm. John's left hand only had a faint scratch. If a German Shepherd was eating someone's right arm, they would likely use their left hand to push the dog's mouth away. Dr. Russell admitted John's arm marks and the Alberts dog's teeth sample did not match. Dr. Sheridan and Dr. Russell could not confirm the marks on John's arm were definitely from a dog. They both agreed no other injuries on John appeared to be possibly caused by a dog or other animal. Testimony indicated pig DNA could have been from food that John or somebody else touched and then touched his sleeve. Brian Albert and Brian Higgins went out to dinner before the Waterfall Bar, and they were the first two people that John hugged at the bar. Both of those guys look like they enjoy a good BLT. Bacon, lettuce, and tomato. Now I want to eat one. Maybe they had bacon DNA on their fingers. John's phone data ruled out any encounter with Chloe in the house because he never went in the house. Next, Colin Albert had thrown beer cans and bottles on John's lawn, walked on his lawn, taunted him in a Ring doorbell video, had bruised knuckles on his right hand a month later, and made a video threatening to beat someone up. Colin killed John. Against that, Colin texted his friend, Jen's daughter, Allie, at 11:54 p.m. Quote, "You can get me now." End quote. At 12:10 a.m., Allie replied, "Here," but at 12:11 a.m., John and Karen were on video outside Waterfall, so it's impossible for Colin to have attacked John. He wasn't even at the Alberts house when John and Karen pulled up, and John never went in the house. The bruised knuckles photo from the defense was from February 26th, but photos from February 11th, 2 weeks earlier, show no injuries on his knuckles. Just a reminder, John died January 29th. Lastly, why would adults stand around and allow 17-year-old Colin to beat up their friend and fellow police officer? Some of these theories are by people who spend too much time at Waterfall Bar. Next theory, Brian Higgins liked Karen and wanted to date her, so he attacked and killed John. Higgins said he parked at the mailbox, but witnesses said his Jeep was not on the street. Higgins estimated he left the Alberts party around 12:30 to 1, but he didn't swipe his card at Canton Police Department until 1:27 a.m. Higgins said he did not call anyone after he left Fairview, but video from his work at Canton Police shows him with an object like a phone near his face at 1:34 a.m., and records show he called Brian Albert at 2:22 a.m. for 22 seconds after a 1-second phone call from Brian Albert, that they both said were bud dials and didn't remember making. Higgins said he saw a tall, dark-haired male enter the Alberts, Some people argue this was Colin or John, but Higgins thought it was Julie Nagel's brother, who did not enter. Against these accusations, there is no evidence that Higgins wanted to be in a relationship with Karen so bad that he wanted John dead. He was skeptical about Karen's intentions in their text messages after Karen initiated the kiss at John's house. The first two people John hugged at Waterfall Bar were Higgins and Brian Albert. There was no animosity. The different testimony about where Higgins parked at the Albert's house is suspicious, but not incriminating evidence for an attack on John. Jen, Matt, and Brian said his Jeep was parked on the street in front of the mailbox, but three people in the pickup truck behind Karen said they were the ones who parked at the driveway, and there were no cars in between them and Karen. The Canton Police Department video shows Brian holding the phone near his mouth, not really his ear. The phone screen appears to be white, but iPhone screens are usually black when on a phone call. It is unknown if he was listening to a video or a podcast, etc., or on a phone call, because his phone records were not revealed. I don't know how it is known that he called Brian Albert at 2:22 a.m., but not who he was talking to at 1:34 a.m., if anyone. I think he only had to turn over certain records. Higgins knows what John looked like, so he was not the tall, dark-haired male who entered the Albert's house. He would have just said it was John. If Albert called Higgins to conspire about something, why did the call only last 1 second? It makes no sense for that to be some kind of signal for Higgins to call him back instead of just speaking when Albert initiated the call. Next theory, police shattered Karen's taillight and planted it at Fairview over the next few weeks. There was missing video of Karen's SUV in the Canton Police Department Sallyport, indicating that is when police tampered with her light. Against this, there are videos from 5:07 a.m., 8:22 a.m., and 4:12 p.m. showing Karen's taillight as missing pieces before any police officer had a chance to tamper with it. A major part of red is missing from that taillight. Other than the snow melting, I see no major difference between those videos and the February 1st photo at Canton Police Department. Karen's SUV arrived at Canton Police Department at 5:31 p.m., and the first taillight piece was found at 34 Fairview at 5:45. There is no evidence that someone broke 40-plus pieces of Karen's light and drove to Fairview to plant just a couple of those pieces on January 29th. If the police were going to frame Karen and plant evidence, why not find all of the taillight pieces on January 29th instead of multiple days over the next few weeks up to February 18th? Doesn't make sense. Defense expert Richard Green testified in Trial 1 that Jen searched Haas Long to Die in the Cold at 2:27 a.m. and she deleted it. This proves Jen knew that John was injured and outside before his body was found. Jen also deleted phone calls from her log. Against this, two experts said Green's 2:27 a.m. estimate was based on when Jen's phone's Safari browser tab was opened, and Whiffen demonstrated live during the trial to show how Green came to that wrong conclusion. Whiffen's company, Celebrate, updated their software to fix the wrong description and avoid future confusion. Jessica Hyde, Style Icon, testified that Jen did not delete the search or phone calls. Jen's phone stored the 200 most recent phone calls. As the 201st call comes in, it deletes the oldest records. Jen signed a consent form to turn her phone over on February 2nd, so the calls from January 29th were auto-deleted, not by Jen. I do have some questions how in 5 days Jen could have had over 200 phone calls, but I have not seen her phone records. In the past 5 years, I don't think I've had 200 phone calls, but nobody likes me. It does not make sense that 2 hours after an attack and murder, Jen searched about her daughter's sports, and then after that, to figure out how long it would take for John to die on the front lawn after something nefarious happened during the party. It does make sense to search that 20 minutes after finding John unresponsive in a blizzard. Jen misspelled the searches, which corresponds to being outside in the cold at 6:23 and 6:24 a.m., and she testified her multiple sclerosis causes issues with her hands. If she was in bed at 2:27 a.m., she could have fixed her misspelling before searching. Some may say she misspelled because she was drunk. Why would Jen be searching for how long to die in the cold if she knew he died inside and then they moved his body to the lawn? Canton paramedic Dan Whitley talked to Karen at the scene, and she asked if John could have survived without a jacket, which lines up with her wondering how long it would take him to die in the cold. Next, Karen said she saw John go inside the Albert side door. Against that, Karen has said a variety of things, and the evidence does not support this or her claim that while she waited, she called John. Phone records prove she didn't call John until 12:33 a.m. when she was driving. 9 witnesses inside and 3 outside stated John never went inside. A snowplow driver, party guests, and random people driving by didn't see John's body. The snowplow driver passed around 2:45 a.m., and his truck has a high vantage point, bright lights, and he said he constantly scanned his periphery for obstacles. When he passed around 3:15 a.m., he saw a Ford Edge, the same car Brian Albert drives, parked near the flagpole. He testified that the Albert family normally does not park on the street, and the plow driver usually calls in vehicles that are on the road because it's blocking their ability to plow. As a courtesy to the Alberts, whom he has known for decades, he didn't call it in. Against that, John's phone stopped moving at the flagpole at 12:32 a.m. It was snowing pretty bad, so the driver's windshield wipers would affect visibility. The snow started to stick to the road and grass by 12:15 a.m. Would it have covered John's body enough in the 2 hours before 2:45 and 3:15 a.m. when the snowplow passed? How could John's phone never move from the flagpole starting at 12:32 a.m. soon after he got out of Karen's car? Then he went inside for a few hours, and then despite everyone leaving before 2 a.m., someone put John on top of his phone between 3:30 and 6 a.m.? It makes no sense. Calgon, take me away. The prosecution said the driver had given different timelines in prior statements and suggested when he saw the Ford Edge was when he was driving on Cedar Crest and looking down Fairview, but not plowing it at that time. The driver is colorblind, which obviously has nothing to do if he actually saw a car, but his snowplow also hit a basketball hoop on the road the same morning, but does not remember that time, but he says he remembers these other times. Also, there was a dumpster across the street from Fairview, but he did not recall seeing that. Next in the reasons for somebody else being guilty column, the Alberts sold 34 Fairview because they are guilty. Against that, Brian testified that his kids had grown up and he and his wife decided to sell their house before John died after Brian's brother sold his house for a good price. They listed their house on November 17th, 2022 for $949,000. It was under contract in February 2023 and it sold on April 10th, 2023 for $905,000. If the Alberts wanted to hide things in the house, why would they even allow someone else to own the house? People say the Alberts' basement flooring was ripped up, which means the Alberts wanted to discard blood and DNA evidence after John was killed. Against that, Brian testified there was water damage in the basement, and most people selling a home make repairs before listing it. This was a planned attack on John. Against that, why would they plan to attack John when Brian Jr. had 2 female friends to celebrate his birthday? Jen invited and expected Karen to also come inside the house. Jen told police that Karen and John got along at the bar. If they all wanted to frame Karen, why wouldn't they tell police that Karen privately told them negative things that would suggest Karen had a motive to hit John? There were a lot of things during the trial that certain witnesses said that did not paint Karen in a bad light. If they were trying to frame her, they could have lied to try to make her look guilty, and they did not. Next, John's injuries show he was beat up and attacked by a dog. Against that, John's black and blue eyes were due to his skull injury. John had no missing teeth or a mouth injury from getting hit in the face, and no broken nose. He had 2 scratches on his nose, and Karen said one of those was from a piece of glass that she removed when she found him. He had no damage to his eye socket, but a small laceration on his right upper eyelid. No defensive wounds, bruised knuckles, and his fingernails were not damaged. He was a 6'1", 200-pound plus police officer hanging out with friends he just got along with at a bar. John would have fought back if attacked inside the Alberts home. John had many marks on his right arm, but they are not all the same as if a dog repeatedly bit him, although some experts say it does match up to dog bites. In what scenario would a dog only bite the top of someone's arm, but not anywhere else on their body or hands, and leave no dog DNA, hair, or saliva? Doesn't make sense. Especially when his phone never went in the house where the dog was. Next reason for, Higgins and the McCabe's said that Brian Higgins parked at the mailbox, but the people in the truck said he did not. Against that does not prove John went in the house and was attacked. Jen said she butt-dialed John 7 times and doesn't remember making the phone calls, but she would have had to cancel the call Or it would have left voicemails on John's phone, but there weren't any. Against that doesn't prove that John went in the house and was attacked. The police report stated, quote, at 12:45 a.m., Miss McCabe texted Mr. O'Keefe again, hello, and then observed the black SUV drive away from the home, end quote. Karen connected to John's Wi-Fi at 12:36 a.m., so this cannot be true. Against that, in trial 2, Jen said she was only sure about going to the Alberts front door for the 12:27 and 12:32 a.m. text messages to John, but remembered Karen's SUV in front of the house's front door, at the flagpole, ahead of the flagpole, and then not outside at all. There are some inconsistencies there, but it doesn't prove that John ever even went inside. The police report also stated, Mr. McCabe said he saw the car in front, more to the left, and then, quote, he observed the same vehicle driving off down Fairview, heading in the same direction it had been facing while parked, end quote. Why didn't Matt McCabe see John on the lawn when he looked outside or drove by when they left around 2 a.m.? Against that, in trial number 2, Matt said he saw an SUV parked in front of the house, then near the flagpole, then past the fire hydrant in line with the trees that separate the neighbor's property line, and then the SUV was gone. Some reasons he may not have seen John's body on the lawn. After they got into their car, he was using windshield wipers to get the snow off, possibly turning the heat on, and focusing on the road after pulling out of the Alberts driveway. There is not a street light near the flagpole to illuminate what is below. For this row, I don't have anything on the left side, but against someone else doing it, if Proctor wanted to frame Karen, why would he delete the ring footage of Karen arriving around 12:36 a.m., and Karen, Kerry, and Jen leaving before 6 a.m., but not delete Karen backing into John's car at 5:07 a.m., that would be exculpatory evidence, possibly for Karen, to say that was how her taillight cracked. It makes no sense. Karen's defense said John could have been attacked in the Alberts garage. Against that, the Alberts garage is not connected to the main house. That's why there's a door near the side door to get in. Why would Brian Albert return from Waterfall Bar, let their dog out from the bedroom, and then into the backyard to go to the bathroom, and then open the side door and put the dog in the cold garage where John would be for no logical reason, and goes against his phone data? Another reason against someone else doing it, there were 9 people in the house and 3 people in the pickup truck, plus many police officers and paramedics. All of them would have had to conspired to lie to police and at 2 trials under risk of perjury just to protect Brian Albert, Brian Higgins, Colin Albert, or a dog. 6 of those people at the Alberts house were not related to the Alberts or McCabe's. 11 of those people were not related to Brian Higgins. John's phone data aligns with their statements he never entered the home and was never seen walking up the driveway to the home, contrary to whatever Karen said. There is no solid scenario with evidence about John getting attacked by a human or dog inside the Alberts house. It's just people imagining what could have happened. Next reason in the 4 column, police never searched the Alberts home and missed potential evidence. Against that, there is a standard for probable cause, and there wasn't enough evidence. John was found near the street, covered in snow, and missing his shoe and hat. People inside the Alberts house said they saw Karen's SUV, and there are text messages from Jen showing that she was confused why they were parked but never came in. And Karen was telling multiple people she hit him or asked repeatedly if she could have hit him and said her white taillight was cracked. By 6 p.m., police found taillight pieces near the crime scene. There was no probable cause there was evidence inside the house because there was and still is no evidence John was inside the house. The Alberts did not come outside to help at 6 a.m., even though Brian was a first responder as a Boston police officer, and there were loud screams and police lights. Brian Albert and his wife Nicole testified that they keep their phones in their bed in case their kids called for an emergency, but said they did not hear the call from Higgins or multiple calls from Jen. Their dog did not bark when Jen burst into the room around 6:30 a.m., or when people were screaming outside like Karen and Kerry were screaming really loud. And Jen and other people who were inside the house after John was found don't remember seeing the dog. Some people claim Caitlin Albert, their daughter, took the dog to her place after she left the party to hide the evidence of the dog biting John. I don't know. It makes no sense to me. Against that, Jen called her sister Nicole at 5:07 a.m. after Karen contacted Jen. After they found John's body, Jen called Nicole at 6:07 and 6:08 a.m. But even though the records show they were answered, both women say they did not speak on those 3 phone calls. Kerry and Karen were trying to resuscitate John while Jen called 911. Jen is seen on police dashcam by John's body. She knew police were on their way and that she was needed in the area of John's body to help with compressions and CPR. There are train tracks right behind the Alberts' backyard that they have become accustomed to sleeping through the noise. Their curtains were closed, and there were no sirens used by the police or the fire department. The Alberts had only been asleep for 3 hours after a long day, drinking alcohol, and a blizzard and windy conditions outside. By the time they were woken up, John's body was gone, and Officer Lenk was at their front door. Next reason 4, the Canton Police Department Sallyport garage videos are missing time, bad quality, and were altered by police to cover up that Trooper Proctor and other officers were tampering with Karen's taillight and possibly the hair on the back of Karen's SUV. Against that, the video is motion activated, so it's going to be missing certain time. The prosecution showed that police department videos before January 29th were also inverted. However, they failed to inform the jury of that before presenting the video, and although the writing on the vehicle was inverted, the timestamp was not. Most of all, Karen's taillight was proven to be damaged in 3 videos before police even had access to her SUV, so nobody in law enforcement even needed to tamper with it. Next reason 4, pieces of glass on Karen's bumper don't match the broken glass near John. One of the 5 pieces of glass found on Karen's bumper was consistent with one of the 2 pieces that Proctor recovered on February 11th, but was not a match for the broken cup near John. Trooper Proctor planted the glass on Karen's bumper. Against that, 6 glass shards from Fairview Road were a physical match for the broken drinking glass near John's body. That cup did not match 2 shards of glass from Karen's bumper, but the lab was unable to test the other 3 pieces of glass from Karen's bumper due to their size and condition was too small. All of the glass pieces were never fully recovered, so the 2 pieces that Proctor found could be a match to pieces that were never found. On February 1st, Hartnett collected the bumper glass. 10 days later, on February 11th, Proctor found a matching piece on Fairview Road, but had been to Fairview Road before that day. So why would he wait 10 days to say he found a match? Defense attorney Jackson insinuated that Proctor planted glass on Karen's bumper. Karen's car arrived at Canton Police Department on January 29th, and Proctor was there. Proctor was also there before Maureen Hartnett and Zach Clark arrived on February 1st to collect evidence and photograph the bumper. For there to be a conspiracy, Proctor would have to break a glass and place shards on Karen's bumper when he knew the police department had motion-activated video, and then claimed to find 2 shards at Fairview, when on January 29th, he already thought there was enough evidence showing that Karen hit John. Police tampered with a hair on the back of Karen's SUV that testing showed likely was from John or someone on his mother's side of the family. The hair appears to be in 2 different positions in photos taken by the state police officer at Canton Police Department. In the against column, I admit it does appear to be in different positions. The only reason I could think of is Officer Clark pulled back the caution tape and let it go. Hair does not weigh that much, but neither does the caution tape. So I wonder, would the force of the tape being let go cause enough air to move toward the back of the SUV to move the hair? I doubt it, but I don't know. The rear SUV door was open and raised at some point, but I don't think photos of the hair were taken after it came back down, and that movement of closing the door caused the hair to move positions. I think it's important to point out the hair would have probably moved down from its original position when the snow melted from Karen's back window. However, this has nothing to do with the 2 different photo positions. Another reason against the glass conspiracy: why would the alleged Canton conspiracy crew inside the Alberts plant the glass that John took from Waterfall if it broke in the Alberts basement? It was found broken outside. Why not have Higgins throw it in the garbage at another location after some kind of altercation inside? Next reason 4, nobody saw Karen's SUV floor it in reverse, hit John, or make a noise outside. Against that, the party guests were talking and there was music playing. The front door was open, and even though some of the witness testimony during the trial mentioned who was sitting where at the table, but it is unknown who was at the table and in the kitchen and where they were looking when Karen's car went 20 plus miles per hour in reverse. If John was holding the cocktail glass in his right hand, would his hand have protected the glass from shattering at the impact and caused pieces to end up on the bumper? If the force was enough to break the glass, why did it not fracture John's hand? How did small pieces of glass end up on Karen's bumper? John read Jen's text while he was walking. In which hand did he hold his phone, and which hand had the glass? Against that, how else did Karen get that dent with paint chipped off? She had no explanation. There was some bruising on John's right hand, but that may have been from an IV inserted by paramedics. Defense expert Dr. Rentschler stated there were 9 punctures in John's sweatshirt's right sleeve, but 36 superficial abrasions on John's right arm. John's injuries are inconsistent with contact in Karen's taillight because the number of holes in a sweatshirt and arm wounds did not match. Rentschler said you would have to line up 36 different contact points to match, and they did not. The defense said the holes in the back of the sweatshirt were caused by the State Police Crime Lab testing. Attorney Jackson asked Rentschler, in order to penetrate the sweatshirt and cut the arm across, would the shards have to be going faster or slower than the arm? Dr. Rentschler replied, they would have to be going faster. If they're moving at a common velocity, with the arm relative to it, they would somehow have to accelerate with more speed to catch up and go beyond the arm essentially. Jackson asked, is that physically possible? Dr. Rentschler said, no. Against that, there were over 40 pieces of taillight recovered near John's body. I don't know how many other cases there are where a 6'1" man was sideswiped by an SUV taillight going 24 miles per hour in reverse, but I would have liked to have seen more evidence from a prosecution expert that an SUV taillight could have caused all of the marks on John's arm. People say a taillight wouldn't even crack if John's arm hit it and Karen was driving 20 miles per hour, but the same people argue Karen going in reverse into John's car at about 1 mile per hour cracked her taillight. That was proven to be false. Jen texted and called John as part of a conspiracy and to find his phone by calling it to hear where it was ringing. Against that, if John went inside, how did he drop his phone outside near the flagpole if Karen dropped him off at the driveway? There is no evidence to support this theory. Did John see on his phone that Jen kept texting and he finally ended whatever argument he was having with Karen and got out, but Karen wanted to talk more, so she floored it in reverse to catch up to him? It makes no sense that Jen would send John those text messages if he was in the house. Even if John somehow was inside and there was a fight, that is not enough time to have the entire group come up with a conspiracy and have Jen pretend to text John like he never came in the house 3 minutes after John and Karen arrived. The 3 people in the pickup truck proved that John would not have even been inside the house at 12:27 a.m. when Jen texted John asking, here. Also in the against column, Karen said John got out of her car with a drinking glass, and part of the broken glass was found in the street and near his body, and a drinking straw was also in the street. If John did not get hit by Karen's SUV, how did his glass break and a piece remain in his nose? How did he get taillight pieces in his sweatshirt? Karen just happened to floor it in reverse soon after John got out, and he stopped moving within a few seconds. Most of John's injuries were on his right side, as if he was walking to the Alberts driveway when Karen floored it in reverse, and he didn't know she was going to hit him. Karen has no explanation for her SUV damage. Hitting John's SUV at 1 mile per hour did not break her taillight or cause the dent with paint chipped off. In the column for somebody else causing John's death, the videos of the ARCA test SUV going over 20 miles per hour appear to be very fast. So I wonder how Karen then slammed on the brakes on the road with snow and did not hit Higgins' Jeep if it was parked at the mailbox. And also that nobody inside saw that transpire if the front door was open. As I've said many times, John's phone location was always on the street or lawn and never inside the house. How does he get attacked by people or a dog if he was never in the house? John's phone temperature steadily declined once John left the bar, indicating he never went inside the Alberts home. 9 people in the house and 3 people outside said John never came in. How would the people inside Fairview even know that Karen's SUV went in reverse at a high rate of speed for them to even try and frame her for killing John with her SUV? No one said they saw her drive in reverse, but her car data proved it. After arriving at 12:24 a.m., John's phone only tracked steps for 85 feet from 12:31 and 56 seconds to 12:32 and 16 seconds, which was 20 seconds, but had no other movement until it was found under John's body near the flagpole after 6 a.m. At trial 2, the defense expert Matthew DeSogra argued the timing of the state's experts may be wrong about when John pushed the lock button on his phone for the last time, but the defense did not even argue that John was walking outside at that time at 12:32 a.m. or that he locked his phone at 12:32. So they said he was inside getting killed in the basement between 12:21 to 12:24, yet they did not bring that up when arguing this other later point. The distance from John's body near the flagpole to the front door was measured at 72 feet. It's impossible for John to have walked inside, gotten attacked by friends he just hung out with at the bar, and then dragged to the flagpole in 20 seconds. Karen's SUV had taillight damage and a dent, and she talked about it before backing out of John's garage and bumping his car at 5:07 a.m. Why would Jen text the question here to John at 12:27 and then pull behind me at 12:32 if they were together inside? John read both messages and used Face ID to unlock his phone, and then his phone never moved from the flagpole. The federal investigation examined whether local police compromised the investigation into John's death. It included expert reviews and witness interviews, but concluded with no charges filed. After Karen called Jen in the morning, Jen's phone records show that she called John, Julie Albert, Nicole Albert, and Tom Beatty. If she knew John was dead on the lawn, why would she even bother waking up these other people? I'm sure some people will say it was part of a conspiracy, but there is no evidence of that. Next in the reasons for column, Brian Albert upgraded his phone, so that means he turned in his old phone, the day before a legal filing stating witnesses should preserve their phones, and he did not even tell the prosecution he had already gotten rid of it during a call telling him and other witnesses to preserve their phones. Brian Higgins also got rid of his phone. Against that, the request by the defense was later denied by the judge. Higgins testified that he changed his phone after a suspect he was investigating called him. Months later, he threw out his personal phone after the judge ruled he did not need to save it. He said his work phone had more important information on it. Also, Higgins provided his text messages with Karen and John, and when compared to the phone extractions of Karen and John's phones, it showed Higgins did not delete or try to hide any of those messages. In the for column, people say Chris Albert grabbed Higgins' arm while leaving Waterfall, and Higgins motioned to John, and that indicated they were planning to hurt John. Also at the trial, the defense was arguing Higgins and Albert were sparring in the Waterfall, and that was practice for them to later attack John. Against that, eye roll, get real. That's so stupid. In the for column, Chris and Julie Albert took photos in front of John's house and taunted him that they were on his property. Against that, if there was such animosity, why did John bring his nephew to the restaurant owned by Chris on January 28th and exchange phone numbers planning to meet up later, and they hung out amicably at Waterfall? Some people argue that the SUV key cycle information was misrepresented by the prosecution, and Karen's SUV went in reverse at 24 miles per hour when the tow truck driver went in reverse at her parents' house, and Karen's tires spun in the snow, indicating it went over 20 miles per hour, but it was not. Against that, the data showed before the trigger event of 30% throttle, Karen's SUV was traveling at 13 miles per hour going forward. That did not happen in the surveillance video from Karen's parents' house. Finally, Jen McCabe lied about everything. Against that, her Google search was proven to be at 6:23 and 6:24 a.m., not 2:27 a.m. Although her 7 phone calls to John that she does not remember making appear odd, the alternate theory that she was doing it to hide John's murder makes no sense. The various suspicious things about Jen's statements don't answer the even larger number of suspicious facts that point to Karen being guilty.
Let me know in the comments below, who do you think caused the death of John O'Keefe? If you think it was not Karen, what evidence do you have that goes against what I put in my spreadsheet? Thanks for watching.